On that subject, let's bring in Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. He's chairman of the House Intelligence Committee and member of the Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He also is out with a new book today. It's titled Midnight in Washington: How We Almost Lost Our Democracy and Still Could. Mr. Chairman, it's great to have you with us here in New York this morning. As you listen to Secretary Clinton's remarks, it dovetails exactly with what you're writing about in this book. And as you look at the title, How We Almost Lost Our Democracy and Still Could, it's that still could that lingers over the country right now. What makes you say that? What are you watching from the inside of government that makes you believe we still could have a crisis in front of us in terms of our Constitution?
Well, I think the Secretary is absolutely right. We are in a crisis already. I think the problem is really at our feet. And as a member of the January 6th Select Committee, I have to acknowledge there could be another violent attack on the Capitol. But the greater danger, frankly, to the country is what's going on around the nation. People pushing the former president's big lie about the election, ushering in a whole new slate of laws to strip independent elections officials of their duties and give them over to partisan boards and partisan legislatures. The president, former president rather, out there campaigning for secretaries who, unlike Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, who the president badgered into finding 11,870 votes that didn't exist, but who had the courage to say no, he's trying to install people who will find those non-existent votes. And that's how democracies come to an end. And so we are at a real point of fragility right now.
We've ceased to be surprised by the behavior of Republicans who bow to Donald Trump. But as you watch the clip of, say, Steve Scalise or the former Vice President Mike Pence say it was just a day in January, or Chuck Grassley on stage the other night in Iowa with former President Donald Trump as he spews these lies and really, as you say, lays the groundwork for what may be ahead, how do you explain their behavior? You work alongside many of these people. You've drafted legislation with some of them, and yet to a man and a woman, they are lining up behind this lie and the former president. How do you explain it?
Well, indeed, that's a big reason why I wrote the book is how do we explain that? How do we explain how in 4 short years, Donald Trump, this immoral human being, could completely remake a political party in his flawed image? And I saw it day by day by day with these sacrifices of conscience of people I worked with, people I respected and admired, who, as it turned out, didn't believe any of the things they were saying. I can't imagine that Steve Scalise, when he ran for Congress, was thinking, I want to be in Congress so I can push a big lie by a president about an election and undermine our democracy. But as I mentioned in the book, Robert Caro, eminent historian, once observed in an interview that power doesn't corrupt as much as it reveals. It doesn't always reveal us for our best, but it reveals a lot about who we are. And power has revealed that a lot of the people I work with turned out not to care about any things they said they cared about. But it did reveal something else too. And this is why I'm still optimistic, notwithstanding our present difficulties. It revealed heroes like Marie Yovanovitch. It revealed people of character like Dan Coates, people who did the right thing. Sometimes it cost them their job. Sometimes it threatened their career. Often doing the right thing did. But they persevered. And we are a deeply resilient country made up of a lot of people of courage and conviction. We'll get through this. But what we do right now in pushing back against this big lie will determine how long is it going to take for America to get through this dark period?
So, yeah, go ahead.
So, Congressman, sorry, we want to talk about the January 6th Select Committee. You're obviously a part of that. We have seen President Trump and his former President Trump and his allies try to be real obstructionist about this. He's thinking of invoking executive privilege. The current White House saying they're not going to go along with that. But also you have members like Steve Bannon and others who are defying subpoenas to appear. What happens? Walk us through these next steps. And if they won't come in, is there any way you can compel them to? And if not, what consequences do they face?
Well, Steve Bannon was called in as a witness during the Russia investigation, and he came in first not under subpoena, and then he was subpoenaed. This was during a Russia investigation led by the Republicans. When he came in under subpoena, he brought 25 questions written out for him by the White House, by people who were the subject of our investigation, and he said, these are the only questions I'm going to answer, and I've already answered them. The answer is no. And the Republicans were more than content with that. But things are not the same for Steve Bannon. The Republicans would not press these subpoenas, and they knew, the witnesses knew that they had an Attorney General in Bill Barr who would never hold them in contempt, who would never prosecute them for violating the law, because, after all, Bill Barr had been held in contempt. now we have a Justice Department that is independent. Under Merrick Garland, it believes in the rule of law, that no one is above the rule of law. If witnesses do not show up, we will hold them in criminal contempt. We will vote them in contempt in the House, and we will refer them for prosecution. And that is, I think, that will be a sign that our democracy is recovering, that the Justice Department is upholding the principle that no one is above the law.
Congressman, isn't that really the point that the American people need to see, is that we are not as surprised at the behavior of Donald Trump, those of us that knew him and had to deal with him in New York. But what has surprised us is some of what has appeared to be the meek kind of pushback on Donald Trump and people not really standing up to him. One of the things that I think distinguished you is that you fought back, but there a lot of your fellow members of Congress on the Democratic side seem to want to go along to get along. Don't you think that this is a definitive moment that this January 6th committee has to demand if these people do not comply, they must face the full weight of the law? The American people will not know that we have not lost our democracy unless people are not above the law. We can't have a bipartisan conversation with people saying, I'm not going to respect your subpoena.
Reverend, you're absolutely right. And on the Select Committee, we are of one mind. Anyone who does not comply, we will refer for criminal prosecution. And there needs to be accountability. It really is essential for us to bring our democracy back from the brink, that we once again have a rule of law that applies equally to everyone. But one of the things that terrifies me about the upcoming midterms is we need to make sure that the party in power believes in the rule of law. One of the stories I tell about Kevin McCarthy is sitting next to him on a plane, having a private conversation, and then him going to the press and telling the press the exact opposite of our conversation. And when I confronted him on the House floor about this and said, Kevin, I said the exact opposite of what you told the press, his answer was to me, yeah, I know, Adam, but you know how it goes. Yeah. We cannot have a leadership in Congress that has no commitment to the truth, that shares Donald Trump's willingness to falsify and lie about everything. And so this is what puts us at peril. I think of all the damage that Donald Trump did to our democracy, the most corrosive was this relentless attack on the truth.
And Mika, as we both know, so many of those Republicans will tell you they don't like Donald Trump, they wish he'd go away in private, and then they go on TV and fan the flames of his big lie.
And the congressman's story about how that played out between him and the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy at the time, that is very Trumpy, and we've been through that type of experience as well early on.
Yeah, sure. And Mika, your father, you grew up with your father when he lived in a very different Washington, where Democrats and Republicans worked hard to understand each other, get along with each other. They would have dinner with each other, go to churches, synagogues, would go out and do things, keep families together. And there was a sense of trust. Even when I was there in what's called the Gingrich years from 95 to 2001, things got rough. But if you gave somebody your word on the House floor, and if you had done something, it's so interesting, Congressman. It wasn't so long ago that I was there. I can't imagine a member of Congress having a private conversation with me and then going around and mischaracterizing it in public. It wouldn't happen. And when I was in Congress, they considered me at the time, things have changed a lot with what the Republican Party stands for now, they considered me to be a red-hot small government conservative. I'd go talk to Democrats all the time. We would disagree strongly on things. We would sit there, would have polite conversations. And then all my years there, I've never had happen to me what you just said happened to you, which I fear may be too commonplace. How in the world can you work with people when you can't even trust them to not mischaracterize private conversations?
Well, you're absolutely right. And it was just a shock to me. I couldn't imagine that someone would do such a thing, and confronted him immediately on the House floor. But look, people like Kevin McCarthy were made for this moment, a moment when his party believes the truth isn't truth, that everyone is entitled to their own alternate facts. You say anything you will, you do anything you need to do to gain power and to try to keep it. But it's what really has put our democracy on such edge. Because one of the painful lessons for me of the impeachment trial was there's nothing wrong with the impeachment provision. There's nothing wrong with the drafting of our Constitution. We don't need to change the threshold for impeachment or anything like that. But if those provisions aren't animated by people who believe in right and wrong, who tell the truth, who try to understand the spirit in which those provisions were written, then none of it works. But at the same time, again, we can all give into despair here, but we don't have that luxury. At the same time,
right.
When I listened to Mitt Romney explain why he was voting to convict and was willing to suffer all the anger and fury of his party, that he was a deeply religious man and he had children and grandchildren to answer to, I saw, there are people of virtue who justify the faith our founders had, that we don't have to be ruled by a despot, that we can control our own destiny.